we'll get rolling. We have a special guest with us today, and I'm just going to say a few words myself and then introduce her and let her take the stage. Hang on one moment. Well, I guess my clock does say 10 o'clock now. So let's get started. Hi, everybody. Jeff Krieger. Let's see, get my camera down here a little bit. Sorry about that. Jeff Krieger, Executive Director of the Minnesota Association of Townships. Welcome. I appreciate you all coming here today. And I should actually mention welcome to those who actually view us online, with the recording. I know not everybody sees us here live, but we do have a number of people that actually do see the recording of our webinars when we post those on our website. I do want to make note that I will not be present on Township Tuesday on August 1st and also September 19th. We're still going to have it. I just won't be here. I have some other business, unfortunately, I'll be taking care of, and I won't be able to help you out with that. District meetings, again, are going to be all throughout the month of August. The Township Insider should be coming out. You should get that in a couple of weeks, and that will have the dates and the places located in those pages. If you want to find out now, you can go online. And I'm sure we will also have the e-newsletter going out shortly as well that will also talk about the district meetings. There are six districts that will have elections for board of directors. So we do ask that that you show up, and even if there's only one person on the ballot, it's imperative that you get there and vote for the person that you want to have as your district director. It is a very important role. I know some people take it. May think of it as a little lackadaisical, and we cannot do that anymore. We need to make sure that people we have are positive leaders who are looking out for all townships, and that's a great thing to have as some of our leaders. I'd also like to increase the attendance at the district meetings too. So, without further ado, our special guest today is State Auditor Julie Blaha. And she's going to have a few comments to talk about with everybody. And if you have any questions, please, now is the time to bring those up. And with that, Julie, I will leave it to you. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. I'm trying to get all of my screens right here. So let's see if I've got this. Again, I'm Julie Blaha, your state auditor, and really excited to be able to talk with you today. And I want to share a couple of things, but more importantly, I'm looking for some feedback. Doesn't have to be today, but this is a kind of a discussion that we're trying to have across the state. So let me start out by sharing my screen here. And so let's see if I can do this right. Screen 2. Let's see if this works. There we go. I think a lot of you won't be surprised to hear that we are facing a public finance shortage. And so this summer, as I tour around the state, as I try to get, as soon as the snow stops flying to when it does fly, it's when we try to get around physically as to as many places as possible. We just went through and met with 13 groups in Southeast Minnesota, and we're going to continue doing that around the state this summer. And also in these places. And we're getting at the idea of how do we handle this shortage. Now, of course, I think a lot of you know what we do, so I might not, see if I can get this to work. There we go. Just a reminder what our role is. We oversee, we're up to about $60 billion right now in government activity that we're overseeing. We do examinations, audits, investigations, legal compliance checks. We try to provide support, and that's probably our biggest connection with the townships is training, tools, CTAS, any one-on-one support we can provide you. And in fact, just a heads up, CTAS, we did get about $500,000 to in the last legislative session to trick out CTAS some more. We're going to improve the level of encryption. Plus, we are also looking to add some extra training, things to kind of get people to take it on, and also fix a lot of the suggestions that you've all made as well. So we'll keep you posted on that. So if you have CTAS ideas, our local county, town accounting system suggestions, great time to get them in, because we are now staffing up to do a lot of a big surge of work on CTOS to keep improving that. Then we also do analysis. We do we collect data and then we put that back in a report. You may be familiar with the town report, of course, that every so often. By the way, the people on this group, thank you for reporting to us. It's huge. We do have to do a little chasing sometimes, and also Matt, your organization's been so helpful in helping us chase down that data. And sometimes, reporting can be like the first step in making sure things are cool, things are working okay. Not reporting can be a red flag. So all of your help in getting reporting is appreciated. And then, of course, we put that back out with some context to help people make decisions based on facts. So now as we look, though, at this specific situation, here's the situation. We look at the demand. I think we all feel this. The public is increasingly wanting more accountability, more transparency in public finance. And for good reason. If there's more money out there, you need to be taking good care of it. We also are seeing increased pressure on the audit field because of additional audits required due to the increased federal funds. Federal funds go over a certain level, usually $750,000. We have to have additional work, and as a result, that's can increase the need for more hours from our auditors. So with that happening, though, we're also facing a real supply issue. Right now, about 60% of public finance workers are older than 45. We're delightful, but the problem is not that. That's not the problem. Is that only about 20% are younger than 35. So what we're seeing is fewer people in we're starting to see the graying of the industry. Plus, we're seeing in accounting specifically, the number of graduates are declining, and the number that are leaving the profession because of things like burnout or being pulled into other fields, other financial fields, private sector, technology sectors, is pulling people from the field as well. And so according to the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, we are at a point of severe shortage. And I think any of you who deal with this are probably not surprised that we're at a shortage point. And here's some of the results of that. We have seen some increases in numbers of entities nationwide not completing audits, and even to the point of not being able to complete their basic financial documents. For instance, about 149 entities around the country, local entities, lost their bond rating. Ones that had bond ratings just lost them. Not had a bad bond rating. Standard & Poor's refused to give them a rating at all because they didn't have enough financial documentation. That is devastating for a community that bonds or has to do relies on any lending. And it's kind of the canary in the mine talking about what's happening across the country. And we need to make sure it doesn't happen here. We're also getting increased calls to us about difficulty in finding auditors. Now, it started with towns. Towns, you were probably the first people in Minnesota that we started hearing problems getting the agreed upon procedures done if that was required of you, where we would hear people saying, no, it's not just that we can't afford them, it's that they won't even bid on our job. And so we know that's an issue. We're also now hearing it. Charter School Association called us up and said, we have a couple dozen charter schools that are struggling to find auditors. We've had two accounting firms dropped all of their fire relief associations, saying that's just business we can no longer do. We're hearing more cities talking about struggling to find auditors or to keep their own staff so that they can actually be prepared for an audit. So we're starting to see real pressure here. So all of this together means this is the issue that we're facing. And so this is the challenge that the question trying to answer this summer particularly. There are lots of other questions around it, but specifically, if we have a declining supply, how do we make sure that audits, AUPs, any of those kind of examinations are available where the risk and the need for accountability is greatest? We don't have enough to go around. How do we make sure it gets to where it's most needed? So some of the suggestions we've been starting to get include, this list keeps getting longer, so it's getting kind of small. Do we need to look at some thresholds for audit requirements? For instance, there's a threshold of about $1 million for at one level if you have both a clerk and a separate treasurer. It's $1 million, but for cities in the same situation, it's only $233,000. And a lot of those thresholds haven't changed for 20 years. And if the number was right 20 years ago, you adjust for inflation, it probably should be higher now. Also, the timing of audits and examinations. Do they have to be every year, or could they be every other year? Still cover all the time involved, but just put the report out every other year. That can cut your costs and the time needed for your examination by 40%. Do we change the types of examinations? Are there places getting full audits that could be well served simply with an agreed upon procedures, an AUP, or things like that? How do we get the type of financial professional that needs to do it? Do we need to change it, make it easier to become a CPA, more attractive to become an accountant? Do we need to change the type of people who do audits? Do they have to be CPAs? And then beyond that, are there record keeping things we could do? Are there some records you're keeping that you just don't need to be keeping? Are there some requirements that made sense 50 years ago, but really don't make sense today? Can we weed out some of the extra work and the extra pressure on you all so that it's easier for you to prepare for other work? Are there technology opportunities that we can do? Can we work with CTAS? Are there ways we could trick that out? Is there other technology that can help save us time? Are there other things that we haven't even thought of? One of the things one of my own staff members talked about today was if we could provide better training to financial staff at the local level, it'll be easier for us to do their audits because their stuff will be all together. It'll be easier for them to prepare and it'll be easier for us to do. That will cut hours and cost as well. So that's what we're looking at. One thing that we are doing in our office, again, along the kind of training and support route that we think will take pressure off the whole public finance industry, is we are hiring a township specialist. Now we're working, ideally, we want to get them to start this fall, but just in case, let's say it takes us a little bit, we'll definitely be starting by 2024. But we're going to have someone in our office that their whole job is townships. That's it. They focus on townships, supporting you in your work and of having good fiscal integrity. And so as we put that together, we could appreciate your outreach and what kind of support would you like from us? If you outreach at osa.state.mn.us, that's our general email account for giving us advice, telling us things that you think we should be doing, any sort of ideas or commentary or things you think we should change. Outreach is the email that we put out there. So one of the things that we try to do to support you all is sometimes we chase you down if we're missing data. We want to help you use CTAS effectively or keep track of your accounts effectively, answer questions you have. So we're hoping that by having a township specialist, we don't need to go to the place of, say, adding a penalty in if people don't report to us, because we have a significant number of people who don't report and it's gone up. We may need to add a penalty like withholding township aid, like we do with cities and counties that don't report to us. If a city or a county doesn't report to us, it holds up their county program aid and their local government aid. Now, we don't have anything like that here. And ideally, I would much rather increase our reporting through support than penalty. So we want this township specialist, I think, will be a good thing. Even if we have a penalty, we'd still want this level of support. So this is again, kind of our last shot to avoid penalties. Again, this doesn't have to do with a lot of you on this call because you're generally getting your stuff in, but we also want something that can be supportive. So when it comes down to it, what's the feedback I'm hoping from you? I'd love to know what you'd like to see in our township specialist, the kind of person, the kind of support you'd like us to provide you. Also, ideas you might have that go along these things about taking pressure off of the financial industry, the public finance industry in general. Are there things that we can be doing in the short term that could do that? So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And all I expect is that after that 10-minute discussion, that this group will have all the answers to the shortage and all the support. That's all I'm expecting from you. I mean, Jeff promised me that's really what this group is for. Though I have to say, if there are suggestions or questions or thoughts you all have for me, I would love to hear them. But again, always that outreach. I'll put that in the message too, the outreach email. You'll come up with something at 3 in the morning and you can just email us there as well. And we can take your ideas that way. So with that, are there any thoughts or suggestions you already have for me on either of these ideas?
Julie, thank you very much for that. Anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, or you can write your questions in the chat box. But I do want to just let everybody know, with the help of OSA, the Office of the State Auditor, Matt is actually coming together with a CTAS certification type program. And so we can help all the treasurers and clerks fully learn how to utilize CTAS and the proper reporting of that. We do know that there are a number of townships that do not take advantage of any of our training whatsoever. And which is why we're trying to get Matt U off the ground and get more people acclimated to online studies if they don't want to do the in-person type studies. But with that, I'm going to pass off to Reno. He has his hand up.
Good morning, Auditor Blaha. Thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us today. I'm a supervisor in Cass County, Minnesota for Turtle Lake Township. Also, too, I'm a district director for District 11 for the Minnesota Association of Townships. And the idea of a township specialist, I think, is fantastic. So our townships have a point person that they can just call and talk to.
Yes.
The other thing too, and I'm sure that Lori Stalker, our trainer supervisor for the association, would probably be first to tell you the amount of questions and stuff that comes up on CTAS. But as we reach over into the financial realm, I see that as a different issue than just CTAS. Because I think policies and procedures and the way that townships run their financial business, how they keep the records, how they store the records, and what they do with those, I think are an entirely different issue. Because as I travel around the state and visit with different townships and stuff, you hear different stories of their approval process for writing checks and what type of records they write checks off of, and what do they put in the minutes. And so I'm hoping that as you design this, and this is also for you too, Jeff, as the executive director, that we can come alongside of you and not just have the Matt U, because one of the issues too that we run into is not everybody has access or good access to the internet. And as you mentioned too, 45 is quite young. When you start looking at supervisors,
I'm with you. Yes, they're babies. It just, if you're under 45, you're just a pup. Totally.
Yeah.
Amen.
So when you look at township supervisors, and I've made this comment many times, it's all gray. And so 65 is young in township supervisors, but our folks are aging out. And a lot of them are very resistant to getting heavily engaged into the computer networking. And they're going to do it the old way, just like they did 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Some of them have been on the board that long. So I think it's extremely important that we design a program that we can do a lot of outreach. And I would think that as you're designing this new person's program and job description, I realize they can't always be out, but we can help you with that and come alongside of you. And I would think that in the initial phases of this, I'm hoping that we can work with you, and at every one of our official functions throughout the state of Minnesota, that we allocate time to talk about different issues that you're seeing, that you're facing. And then on the other side, issues that we have that we just don't know what to do. I mean, we can't explain why some townships have failed to report to you year after year after year. We just can't. We don't have a reason for it, but their township elected them. And even though we talk to them, it doesn't happen. But we would like to work with you as you design this, because I think it's important that we still focus on meeting people in their territory.
Oh, I think you put that. I love the way you put that, because that idea of, do we want everybody to be on? Absolutely. I'd love it if everybody were on CTAS. But you know what? Right now, if you're willing to do this, extremely high paid, super high honor, extremely easy, relaxing job. You know what? We'll meet you where you are. You know what? If you want to do it, we'll figure it out for you. And I do also want to you also reminded me, I was going to do at the end, but the huge thank you I want to give to you all, because the reason we were able to get that passed was because of your support. And the idea that, and also the case that you've made, the townships matter, you know, just the idea that we go to the legislature and say, hey, this is a layer of government that absolutely deserves more support. And so, yes, I think you're absolutely right that one of the first people, whoever that is going to meet with y'all as we're putting that together and making sure that we're doing that direct support and chasing. You know, the biggest way we get people to report, you know, we make it easier and all those things, but at the end, you have to have someone who just chases them down. I just call them chasers. And so what they're doing is they're just making the call. And often, because that call has value more than just the reporting, because sometimes when you're making that call and you do that chase, that's when you find out, oh my gosh, somebody just quit and you're brand new and you don't know what you're doing. And you're all of a sudden, you thought you knew, or you just didn't realize you're supposed to do it at all. Because transition turnover is causing a lot of issues. Partly, and it's always been a challenge, I think, for the last quite a while in townships, but now it's spreading even to larger entities where we're seeing even very large counties sometimes, where they get such a level of turnover that they start to have all kinds of financial problems with record keeping, with processes, because they're not used to turnover. And I think that the idea of how do we respond to turnover, because I could see the specialist also being somebody, hey, when you're new and after they call you, they call us. And because you know someone to talk to, because you're brand new and the last person thought they kept good records for you and trained in, but then they went off to the, and you don't know where they are anymore. Or, you know what, Marge decided I'm going on that bike trip. I'm going west. I'm going to tell you where I'm going. And she's gone and she knew where everything was. And so we understand I think that you're right, that's a really important role for our township specialists to be there in those transition points. And when people are not sure what else to do. Yeah, thank you for that.
That is a great comment, Reno. Thank you. And you also, State Auditor Blaha. There is a statement in the chat talking about townships audit each other randomly, anonymously. And especially if it's anonymously, if there's somebody who excels at that, they're not going to know who it is that they're auditing.
It's like a peer review. That's that's how auditors audit each other. We have a peer review structure like that. And so, for instance, other states will have and our team will go out and audit other states. Their team comes in and audits us. And it's kind of a peer review kind of a structure. Well, that is interesting. That is really interesting. The idea of having a peer, and then it makes you better at what you do too, when you do a peer review. So Heather, I think that's a really interesting idea because, you know, you get to be, if you're auditing somebody else, well, you learn a lot in that process that helps yourself as much as it helps the other person, the other entity. Well, that's interesting. That is really an interesting idea. How do you is there a peer review option for getting some of these AUP done and stuff like, oh, I like that a lot.
Especially if your budget's within a certain threshold, within a certain range. Maybe
yeah. And you can do a peer review.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
Oh, that is really interesting. Yeah, that's the first time I've heard that. I haven't heard anybody else bring up a peer review structure.
You know, right, way to go. First one on the block.
That's really good. That's really interesting.
There is a comment also, very happy to hear about this. We're going through getting a new clerk treasurer after 20 plus years. And obviously there's a bit of anxiety there. Resource would be so important. Glad to hear that. And of course, the first step is trying to hire a replacement if we can find one. There have been no bites on the job posting. Yeah, that is a challenge everywhere. As Auditor Blaha has mentioned, even in the audit position, they are so woefully understaffed. It's around the country, it's just ridiculous.
I see the burden. Oh, Mary, your burdensome idea is the idea of peer review is like, if everybody is so busy, how do we even go to each other? Is that Mary, the thought you're having there is like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I could also go and do that as well. Is that the point you're making there?
Yep, it is.
Yeah, I get that point. Okay, that's fair. That's my other thought too. Is like, is there another way we can, this gets so at who can do this stuff? Is there like, you know, if you're thinking about, I've been in many organizations where we haven't had to have an audit, but we had an audit committee, right? And so that committee did internal auditing. It's kind of basically an internal audit structure. And so you have, is there some other group you can put together that can do these things that may not be CPAs? At a certain level, you can have a group of people that, you know, that who knows, maybe it's, again, I'm starting to kind of ramble on this, but the idea of how do you do it where you don't expect everybody to have to also now do another audit to somebody else, right? Yeah, that's fair, but is there some other, maybe another group that we can have kind of you know, kind of not a volunteer group, because I always think you should get paid for work you do, but some other way to do that. Oh, I love, that's very interesting on that. Like the county unit, set up a committee for the, oh, interesting. Kind of a county.
Oh, that is interesting, Deanne. Because Auditor Blaha, we have county units. Almost every county has county units,
Right.
Where the townships in those counties get together and meet and network and figure out what everyone else is doing and best case scenarios of how to do things.
Well, I
so-
love that, because that's also how we, you know, it's interesting because your first thought is like, oh, auditing yourself, is that a thing? But, you know, if you do a peer structure, for us, the way our peer structure works is through NASAC, is through our National Association of State Auditors, Comptrollers, and Treasurers. And I know you're probably thinking that crowd must be a party. Oh yeah, a lot of khaki, a lot of spreadsheets. And so, anyway, but that's the group that we set up our peer review through, is through our association. So the idea of, oh, that's really, I don't want to commit to anything, right? But you can see I'm getting, I don't want to say yes to stuff. I love this idea, but I think it definitely deserves some exploration on that, because yeah, is there a way to do that?
You could even have a county unit. So I'm in Scott County, so have my county unit do auditing of Dakota County. Yeah, so it's not even of your own county, and so maybe that could
Exactly. Oh, exactly. Yeah, the idea. But then, and the idea of, you've got an interest in, I think we all have an interest in being fair, because you want to keep that place out of trouble. You know, if you pull your punches on giving that kind of feedback, you are setting somebody up. There is no honor in not telling people what they need to hear when it comes to their finances. So I think there, again, that peer review structure. Can we have some more of those? Oh, that's really interesting. Peer review, internal audit structures, all of those structures, at what point are they sufficient? I think that's the idea of, like, at what point, at what size is that appropriate and is plenty for what you need? Oh, that's really interesting. Oh, by the way, Mary, I look at the other comment on the idea of MMB deposits. Handbook they're using to guess if it's a PILT, ag market credit, whatever, just tag it. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. I don't know enough detail to answer that question, but Mary, I love that. I can imagine that you're not the first person to have that question, where it's hard to tell what it's supposed to be covered under.
Lori, I have a feeling you'll be able to answer that.
I think that goes through the Department of Revenue.
But
MMB.
the idea of, let me
And
check on that. I think I want, let me see if I can check on something like that. And I don't know, maybe this might be something you all have, but this also seems to be like, it's also the idea of, like, it's one thing, it's more than just a question of, is this really the best way to do it? It seems like it's just kind of frustrating to try to figure out what's what, and there's not a clear place to say, is this built, is this an ag market? Oh, okay. Just whatever, just tag the deposit. Oh, so you're talking about, okay, these MMB deposits, and they're not being clear about what they are when they come to you.
Correct.
Oh, I see it. Oh, okay, I'm getting the right direction. So it's like, can you just tell us what it is? Oh, I wonder if I can share that with my MMB friends and just say, hey, is there a way they can take that better?
So Charles brings up a good point. He agrees on the initiative, have a township focused OSA representative. He spent 3 hours last night with the clerk and treasurer to get their books to match. Clerk is on CTAS, treasurer is 80 years old and not going to venture into the CTAS world. And so there too is part of the challenge, that we have.
Well, yeah, and the idea of, again, we'd love them to use this, but I don't want it to be, again, when you're in a shortage, if this person is willing to do that work, you know what, we're gonna try to figure out how to meet them where we can.
Beggars can't be choosers. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the idea of doing everything on paper, I think that's getting to be something that's harder and harder to support. I mean, if you have somebody who wants to be paper only, that's risky. Just fire, you know? It's kind of like, yeah, you could do paper only, but I won't allow you to do it if you're a smoker. I don't know. If you do too much grilling in your backyard, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to go to a computer. And I think the idea of how do we make that transition something that people can do, but the idea of record keeping and some of that stuff too. And when you do the transition, the idea of how specifically about paper to electronic transition, that township specialist is going to have to be really well versed on how do we help people make that transition? Because again, I don't almost every, I think if you could just do it, if people would just do it once on these systems, if you could just try it, and you'll just be so happy that you don't have to do that again. It's harder when you've got these great, like kind of math whizzes and mental math whizzes that, I mean, they're very good at this. Nobody's got that brain anymore. And so the idea of transitioning away from that, having it be, it's like, we can't not meet you where you are, but be ready when you're ready to move. And so
I've never used CTAS myself, but I keep hearing from our training manager, Lori, that it's a blessing to have it. It's very, very easy. And with the tweaks that you plan on doing, I'm sure, especially if we're able to have some say in it, Lori would be my representative for that. We could definitely, hopefully make it even better and easier for people. So,
question, Charlie, very good question. What is CTAS? It's our, we provide software for, you could give us $200 once ever, and your access to CTAS forever. CTAS is our city town accounting system, specifically for smaller entities in Minnesota. And so what we have is the chart of accounts. Everything is set up for record keeping in Minnesota for a city or a town. And so we built this. It was built in our office. We maintain it. Not only do we maintain it, but we also support it. So we have Mike, Mark, if you call, and wait, Mike, gosh, I've had to deal with like 4 trainings this morning. And so, oh gosh, our CTAS guy, you all know.
Mark Alvarado.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, it's the first name I couldn't remember. Alvarado, I can remember.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Mark. So you call for support, and it's basically like QuickBooks for local government in Minnesota. And so it's tailored to this. It's also tailored to, the goal is to make it easier to keep track of your finances, as well as easy to report to us too, so that you can just push button, it comes to us. And so, yeah, that's it. That's our program. And
yeah, if you have a question about CTAS, contact Lori Stalker, our training manager at the Met office, and she can get you in touch with one of our trainers or herself, and help you out with that. CTAS is wonderful. Thanks, Charles.
I'm also, just to interrupt just for a second, I'm also going to be on the road and I'm going to be training on just CTAS in September and early October. And I'll have those dates out very, very shortly. I'm waiting for one more venue. So CTAS training coming.
And again, all of the ideas that you have for fixes, and I think we try to harvest those ideas regularly. If there's any we've missed, keep getting them out to us. And you could send them, again, people, I think we typically send them into Mark or send them into Kathy, but if you want to send them to that outreach thing, that's also an option. We'll monitor all of that. But if there are other things that are available, oh yes, and then we can, thank you, Mary, for reminding, we can remote into your computer. Yeah, we can get in there. We can just get in your head. So if you want us to, we'll remote into your computer and help you out. We'll do what we got to do. And so the idea of, oh gosh, these are really good comments here. One of the things is that once we use up all the funds, any funds that we need to do some of our updating for CTAS, then any funds that are still left over are for training. And then some of our other funds that are just generally our base funds, are part of our funding base goes to training too. And again, having this connection to go through your infrastructure has been invaluable. You have kept your own taxes down by making sure I can hire less staff because of this helping you all do. I mean, and I appreciate it so much, because we certainly couldn't do this alone. There's a reason you all were one of the first meetings that my staff said I had to take when I got my job was Matt, because of the way we have such a concrete relationship on just getting stuff done. It's super helpful, but I love all of that.
Appreciate that. You certainly have been a friend of the townships and very supportive of us, and we are very appreciative of all that you and your staff have done. Kathy, Mark, Donald, they're all fantastic people.
Oh my gosh, I have to say, and of all people, it's one thing nice about local government. I always tell people that if you're involved in politics and you're getting disillusioned, you can't watch the news anymore because you can't stand to see what's happening at the federal level. You think the state's a little messed up. Go local. There's always a place where things happen locally, because so many of our issues at this level haven't yet been partisanized. The parties, we haven't picked red and blue sides of roundabouts yet. We haven't picked red and blue sides necessarily of graders yet. I know when I go home for Thanksgiving, for many of you know, I'm a Democrat. My dad is a Trump supporter. And so when we get to a place where we need to take a break, I just bring up roundabouts and say, they're building a roundabout by my house. We're on the same side because I used to drive, we both driven trucks. I drive truck for my dad's machine shop, and we don't appreciate roundabouts because we've driven trucks. And so, and then there'll be other people who will say, we love them because the statistics show you have such a smaller amount of fatal crashes. It's like, yeah. So it's all, the teams get to switch up when you get to this local level. And I think there's great hope in that. And it's partly because we don't have the luxury of an endless fight. If y'all decide to fight forever, we're all stuck in our house for 6 months because no one can get out of their driveway, So this is like the last bastion of hope for Americans working together. So all I'm saying is you're saving the world. And I appreciate that. And I thank you for it. So the next time you're trying to find that receipt, just know this is how you save the world. And I can't thank you enough for what you're doing.
So if anyone's looking for a supervisor for their township, I think Julie Blaha is on the election.
Oh, J turns. Oh my God, J turns. Oh, J turns. I have to say, oh, I love that. Thank you. I'm bringing that up. I think that's going in the speech.
Well, thank you, Julie. We certainly appreciate you being here, taking the time to talk with us. And
again,
anything else that we can do for you, please let us know. But certainly too, if there are any other comments that come in, I'm going to be out talking to all the districts in August. And I'll certainly be bringing some of your comments up and asking for that feedback during my presentation that I give to the township officers. So thank you very much for that.
Appreciate it. Well, keep going, hang in there, and I can't wait to see you all again in person.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good morning. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Graham, I believe, has a presentation for us.
Good morning, everyone. All right, just a moment here while I share my screen. All righty. Let's get this thing started. All right, can everybody see okay?
Yes.
All right. I thought today I would start by talking a little bit about Minnesota's new marijuana law. So this is going to be just a little bit brief. This is a pretty big law. There's a lot of ambiguity in it. There's a lot that's still sort of up in the air. But, this is one of those things that's coming down the pike. So it's probably a good idea to just sort of get oriented about what this thing is. So I thought today we'd talk, in general terms about what give an overview of the new law, give a little bit on Township's powers under the new law, and then some potential ideas for action items for folks. Okay. This thing was passed into law, Chapter 63 of Session Laws 2023, House File number 100 is the formal identifiers of this thing. Starting with this 10,000-foot overview of how this law is set up, it's divided into 9 articles. It's pretty giant. Quite frankly, the legal community, particularly those folks who focus on township law, are still sort of digesting it. There are a lot of questions. There's a lot of ambiguities. But that doesn't mean that we can't productively talk about it. So 9 articles, most of which are relatively straightforward. So first article, probably most important, establishes the Office of Cannabis Management. The idea is we're going to create this new entity that's going to oversee regulation of cannabis flower products, hemp edibles, consumer products. It's going to be doing licensure for cannabis businesses, hemp businesses, requirements and procedures for licenses and operations, legal limitations on the use, on the possession, on the transportation of cannabis flower products, lower potency hemp edibles, etc. Second one is about taxes. Obviously, anytime we touch anything like this, we're going to create some new taxes, apparently. So this provides the tax structure for the retail sale of those products. So it does things like allowing a business income tax subtraction for business related expenses for that kind of thing, imposes a gross receipt sales tax on the retail sale of those products, subjects taxable products to state sales tax, any local sales taxes, and then offer some clarification with respect to what had been the medical cannabis program. Article 3 is business development grants. Article 4 establishes a set of new crimes related to the possession of cannabis-related products. So, they're changing kind of where crime or criminal penalties start to kick in with relation to possession, sale, cultivation of cannabis products. For example, we've got gross misdemeanor and felony crimes for cultivating without a license and cultivating in excess of the amounts that would be legal under the bill, whereas formerly it would have been a criminal penalty to have basically any of this stuff. Article 5 is related to the expungement of former crimes under the old statutory regime. So it provides for automatic expungement of petty misdemeanor and misdemeanor marijuana convictions, establishes a cannabis expungement board to review other cannabis convictions and determine whether a person is eligible for expungement, resentencing, or neither. And it, sort of sets the broad tone for how that board is supposed to go about its business. For example, if an offense involves violence, it's not supposed to get expunged, or if expungement is contrary to the public interest, it's not supposed to get expunged, that kind of thing. Article 6 is a lot of miscellaneous sort of random stuff. For example, the governor is required to negotiate contracts with Indian tribes regarding adult use cannabis. It's making conforming changes. It's requiring education programs on cannabis use. It requires the Commissioner of Health to collect data. And then it adds some provisions related to workplace testing, modifying eligibility requirements for certain public assistance programs, that kind of thing. Article 7 establishes some temporary regulations. Article 8 reschedules marijuana from Schedule 1, where it was formerly, to Schedule 3. And then Article 9 appropriates money for the actual establishment of these sort of physical offices and stuff like that. So the Office of Cannabis Management is created by the new Minnesota Statute 342.02. And it's got a bunch of powers. So this is kind of one of the bigger ticket items, I think, from the perspective of the public here. So the office is tasked with overseeing regulation, production, and sale of cannabis-related products, hemp edibles, that kind of stuff. Transfers. It's now responsible for the medical cannabis program. It's got temporary expedited rulemaking authority. And then it's, it's given a list of a fairly exhaustive list of powers. These are some of the examples that struck me. Develop, maintain, enforce, and organize system of regulation, establish limits on the potency of stuff to be sold by particular businesses to consumers. They're supposed to prevent unauthorized access by people lower than 21 years of age, to issue and renew licenses, that sort of thing. Okay, but do we have to care about this? Are we included in this? Well, that is pretty much always the first question that I think is worth asking anytime the legislature passes a new law related to us. And in this case, we did get included. So we got included in Minnesota Statute 342.01, subdivision 49, which defines a local unit of government to mean a home rule charter or statutory city, county, town, or other political subdivision. So we're pretty clearly included under this category of local government. unit. Well, what are the implications of that? So local government units cannot prohibit the establishment or operation of a cannabis business licensed under the bill. We cannot prohibit the possession, transportation of use or use of cannabis. And here is the relevant statute, the new Minnesota statute 342.13 in parens A. This is the direct quotation. A local unit of government may not prohibit the possession, transportation, or use of cannabis, flower, cannabis products, lower potency hemp, edibles, or hemp-derived consumer products authorized under this chapter. This would be the new 342.13. Okay. So that's a big ticket item about what we can't do, but what can we do? And once again, here we've got our 342.13. In this case, parens C is the relevant portion, and that tells us that we can adopt reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions for the operations of a cannabis business. In particular, it gives us examples of what we can do, which is, you can prohibit cannabis business in a certain amount of a school or a daycare or stuff like that. Here is the direct quote. A local unit of government may adopt reasonable restrictions on the time, place, and manner of the operation of a cannabis business, provided that such restrictions do not prohibit the establishment or operation of cannabis businesses. A local unit of government may prohibit the operation of a cannabis business within 1,000 feet of a school, 500 feet of a daycare or residential treatment facility, or attraction within a public park that is regularly used by minors, including playgrounds, athletic fields. So one big area of uncertainty from my perspective is, how do these two things interact? As we all know, there are plenty of townships out there who use their zoning powers, and some of them zone only to allow agricultural and residential. So are we going to be allowed to do that? Is that, quote, prohibiting the operation of a cannabis business, or is that prohibiting the operation of business in general, not singling out cannabis businesses? We don't really know. Someone is going to have to sue and get sued, and the courts are going to have to tell us which one of those two principles is going to control here. So I think that that's an area to be looking out for in the next couple of years. Now, one of the big advantages that townships have over every other form of government is that we kind of get to watch the bigger governments make expensive mistakes, and then we get to model our policies based on what the courts told them they did wrong. So this is, I think, a great opportunity to let somebody else have the expensive screw up, so we can just sort of watch and then set our policies accordingly. But what about our traditional licensing powers? So township rules in this case is limited pretty explicitly by the statute. So within 30 days of receiving a copy of an application, our local government unit must certify whether a proposed business complies with its zoning ordinances and its building code. And we are allowed to, quote, provide the office with any additional information we believe are relevant to the decision on whether to issue a license. So that's pretty limited, but there is this other sort of process under the law that is the registration of retailers. It is distinct from licensure. Apparently, we're going to register and we're also going to license. I don't know. I'm not the one who authored this thing. It seems like a little silly distinction to me. But we can opt in or out of this registration power. The way that we opt out of it is by sort of granting our power to the county, which, depending on how heavy an administrative lift this might be for your township, might be something you want to consider. In any event, if we decide to do this, upon licensing, certain cannabis and hemp retailers must register with the local government unit, and subject to certain limited exceptions, the local government unit must register the retailer and renew the registration. So there are some businesses that this does not apply to. Limited registration fees are potentially available. Now, before we issue one of these registrations, we may, not shall, conduct a, quote, preliminary compliance check to ensure that they're in compliance with the operation requirements, limits on certain products, that kind of thing. We can, under certain circumstances, suspend registration for up to 30 days. The new Office of Cannabis Management is supposed to review that. They may order a reinstatement, they may order additional suspension, revocation, or other license-based penalties, depending on the circumstances. We can reinstate on our own authority if the violation ends up being cured, and we can impose civil penalties of up to about $2,000 for registration violations. If we decide to exercise this power, there are certain duties that are imposed on us. For example, at least once per calendar year, we're supposed to do a compliance check. Checks are supposed to include stuff like unannounced age verification, kind of like what we're supposed to be doing with tobacco. They can be done by law enforcement. They can be done by another local government unit employee. And we're assessing things like age verification, operation requirements. Are they selling the right kind of products? Are they selling their own kind of products? Are they complying with the terms of their license? So, the advantage of this registration thing is that we can potentially have some limited control over what's happening in our townships. We can potentially, compel compliance with fining. But of course, this new OCM is going to be looking over our shoulder potentially. And we're also going to be buying ourselves a certain set of duties, these duties over here. So it is certainly not, I think it'll be a little bit of a difficult decision to make. Now, in the meantime, one thing that your township could consider doing is adopting an interim ordinance, which is sort of the statute's term for a moratoria, what's conventionally known or colloquially known as a moratoria. So we can adopt a control saying, hey, look, we're not going to do any of this so long as we are conducting a study of the time, place, and manner restrictions for the business. That's the standard, and we can get ourselves a little bit of breathing room if we do this. Now that process is a little bit complicated. We've got a guide on it. If there's interest, we could certainly draft up a model ordinance, but this is the kind of thing that you're going to want to be very careful with. You're going to want to make sure that it's done correctly because, quite frankly, zoning is a complicated area. It's easy to make mistakes in. So anybody who's interested in this, I'd advise pretty strongly to consider hiring a township attorney, somebody who can do individual legal advice for you. Or potentially, if your township's on the smaller side, you could consider getting together with your neighbors, creating a joint powers entity, and sort of regulating this stuff together as a unit. So that was a bit of a whirlwind tour. We are going to be, doing more guidance on this over time, particularly as court cases come in, as we are, making decisions, or as we're getting new information about our powers under this scheme, and as the courts sort of clarify our requirements, particularly as the OCM gets up to speed and starts to issue regulations. A lot of this stuff is subject potentially to change, subject potentially to revision. Okay, a lot of information. But does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Grant. Appreciate that. Yeah, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and just say it live if you'd like. This question here, Graham, is there a time for the moratorium as August 7th next meeting?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch.
It's in the chat. Is there
a time for a moratorium as August 7th is next meeting? I see. So moratoria are part of the zoning process. You are going to have a public hearing. It can't just be done at an ordinary board meeting. But yeah, you certainly could get the process started. I certainly within a month. I think there's time for that. There we go. All right, another chat here. Let's see. Updating employee rules and handbooks. Yes, this thing is fairly complex and fairly lengthy, but certainly Minnesota statutes related to drug testing on employees have been modified by this thing. So, that is one of the things that we're going to be looking at. If there's interest in that, we can take a specific look at it for an upcoming Township Tuesday and zoom in on that problem specifically and kind of talk through what we can and can't do. It's probably a good idea to just do a refresher on drug testing law for employers in general anyway, because that's a little bit complicated and I don't believe we've done it in a while. So that's a great suggestion, Heather. Thank you. It's more complicated than can't test. You can. Certainly, there are prohibitions, including criminal prohibitions related to operating particularly motor vehicles, like hypothetically a grader, while under the influence of these things. But there's a relatively complicated statutory scheme about when you can and cannot test individuals for drugs. You sort of have to adopt a policy ahead of time. And you have to give people particular notices, and you have to do things of that nature. It's more complicated than can't, but I'm a little hesitant to get deep into it now because I would want to have focused my research on that instead of this more general scheme thing. If there's interest in that, I will. You know what? I'll just promise it now. I'm going to do the drug testing one next Township Tuesday. How about that? Seeing a lot of nods. Okay.
Perfect. Any other questions on what Graham talked about, what I talked about, what Auditor Blaha talked about? We had a very good, lively discussion. I appreciate that. Lots of good information. I know I'm going to need to take a nap after this. Just kind of cogitate on it for a bit. Oh, here, Pat, our district meeting is moved from Twig. District 10. Oh, it's in Virginia, Pat. It's at the oh shoot, where is it? Hang on, I'll get it. It is at the Arvig Walker area. No, I'm sorry, wrong one. Iron Trail Motors Event Center Ballroom in Virginia, Minnesota, in St. Louis County. That to be on August 24th. And most directors, and I don't know if St. Louis County was used to this or not, but most of the directors from Matt, they do change up the locations of their meetings just to give other people a closer opportunity to get there. We did know, I did notice, I can't remember who I said this to. There's somebody in St. Louis County who asked me about that and emailed me about that. But anyways, I looked at where the last meetings had been. It had always been at the same place for a number of years. And St. Louis County, Cook County, Carlton, it's such a huge, vast area. I thought, we didn't move it a whole lot. And Virginia, I don't know how far north that is, an hour or whatever from this normal place. But we just thought it'd be more fair to at least start rotating that around. I actually looked at Black Bear Casino, just so you know, but I could not get a decent price for a room there. And so then we looked at Virginia, and that was why we chose Virginia. So that was the reason for that. Any other questions?
I have one.
Yeah, Jim Aaron.
You actually moved the meeting further away from those other county units that you're talking about.
What are the county units?
Carlton, Lake, Cook. You moved the meeting further away in the attempt to make it easier for them to go. It doesn't make any sense.
Again, Jim, as I stated, we try to, most directors try to move it around to give more a variety of
We don't have a director.
easier access. What's that?
We don't have a director. You got rid of him.
Actually, he resigned, but
Yeah, right.
we can take that offline, Jim, if you'd like to. That's fine.
Bigfoot?
So we can take that offline if you'd like and have that discussion. I have no problem with that. I don't think we need to bother other people who are not in District 10. But the decision had been chosen to go to Virginia, and that's where it's going to be this year. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time today, and we look forward to talking with you again in 2 weeks. Take care.